Hey winner, welcome to Red Hot Mindset. I am so glad you're here. Today we continue our Boston Marathon Mom series. Each month we'll be chatting with different moms who qualified for the 2020 Boston Marathon, which was postponed to September due to the pandemic, but it was eventually canceled altogether. These women are resilient, and I'm excited to share their struggle victory stories and why the 2020 Boston Marathon would have been their victory run. I was inspired to do this because I know how disappointed I was hearing the news of the cancellation. When you work for years toward a goal only to have it ripped away from you, it can be devastating. We can't always choose our circumstances, but we can choose our attitude toward them. And these runners have chosen to use this disappointment to propel them forward into new goals. Today's guest didn't start her running journey until her 30s, post children. She attempted a few times throughout her life, but it never gained traction for her. Jen Bergstrom never even planned to run a marathon. Now she has 7 under her belt, including 3 Boston qualifiers. But this year would have been her first Boston Marathon. She's had to work through multiple injuries and figure out how to get her training in with a busy family and work schedule. Jen is a native Minnesotan in the Minneapolis area. She's been married for 17 years and has 2 kids, a dog, and a cat. She enjoys running, traveling, and camping. Being from Minnesota myself, up until recently, I am really looking forward to diving into her story today. Sometimes we push our goals to the side because we think we can't have both a good family structure and a big goal. But Jen proves you can have both. By the end of this episode, I think you'll be itching to develop a big goal for yourself if you don't have one already. Let's get chatting. Hi, Jen. Welcome to Red Hot Mindset. I'm so glad that you're here today.
Hi, Gabe. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I was super excited to find out you were Minnesotan. I wish that we knew that. If I were in Minnesota still, we could have run the Boston Virtual together, but
That would have been fun.
would have been fun. So before we start, I'd love for you to just share a little bit about who you are, what you do, a little about your family.
Yeah, sure. I was born and raised here in Minnesota in the Minneapolis area. And I am married. I have 2 children who are 12 and 14. And, amongst COVID, we're all stuck at home right now. And it's fun to be able to hang out with them for more than, just after that dinner hour and hang out with them all day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. With 12 and 14-year-olds, I'm sure they have tons of activities, tons of friends, places they want to go, things they want to do. So I'm sure that family time is really special right now, huh?
Yeah, it is super fun, and it's fun to see the kids do kind of their own thing, but then check in throughout the day, and just to be able to see them more is super exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So tell us a little bit about how you got into running in the first place. I think it's so fun, your story of trying and then not doing it and then trying and then when you actually started.
Yeah, so I recall back in high school, I attempted to do track for high school, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the running experience. I didn't like the feeling of constantly being out of breath, and so I think I eventually just ended up quitting high school track. And I figured I gave it a shot, and I'm just not a runner. And so in college, I took it up again, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start running because I need something to stay in shape. And, I would try to run a couple of driveways and just be exhausted. And I'm like, okay, I have given it 2 tries and I'm just not a runner. Like, that's okay. I can go to the gym and work out and do the elliptical or things like that, but I'm just not a runner. So kids happen, and trying to go to the gym was no longer feasible, and it was just difficult. So, does my husband go and then I stay home and watch the kids, or do I go and vice versa? So we ended up with a treadmill, and I would just get up in the morning and do some walking. And my sister-in-law at the time had taken up running, and so I was like, okay, maybe I'll give it another shot. And so week after week, I would just increase the speed on the treadmill by like a tenth of a mile an hour to where I could slowly ease my way into it. And so I eventually found out that I kind of enjoyed running and it was a stress relief. And, um, I took it to the streets and it was, kind of me time. And it was super, super fun.
Yeah, I can relate to that. When I was in high school, I played basketball for the reason that at least there was something keeping my attention instead of running. I hated
Yeah.
running. I was like looking at all these cross country people. How do you say that? Cross country people, and going, "You guys are crazy!" And they were only running what, like 2 or 3 miles at a time. It's
Yep.
funny, but the thought of running for fun was not fun. So
No.
I found my love for it in college for the same reason you tried, was just to keep in shape and to have something to do, because I was ultra athletic and I no longer had my basketball team or something to keep me accountable. So now
Yeah.
when it came to trying to find that love for running, what do you think it was that kind of kept you from it in those early years? Like, was it the breathing like you had talked about, or was it just you just didn't find enjoyment? How do you think you found that enjoyment?
I think that's what it was just we know now as we run that the first 2 miles are always the hardest because you're trying to get your heart rate to a place that it steadies out. And so for me, not knowing that you had to get over some type of transition from just being in a sedated state to a running state was probably just what hindered me because I just didn't like that uncomfortable feeling.
Right. Right. It's almost like getting ourselves out of the comfort zone in a way, because
Yeah.
no one likes to do that. We like to have our comfort. We like to be in a place that we know and we trust and all of those things. So I can see that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
But then you did. You pushed through and you realized, okay, once I get past that little uncomfortable, it actually gets comfortable and fun.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So but then it took me a long time to get into races. So I probably spent 3 years dodging my sister-in-law for going or joining her at races because I was like, why would I want to drive somewhere and pay some race fees when I can do it in my backyard for free and I can be done before you even start your running? Like, why leave the comfort of my house to go run somewhere else? So I dodged running for a really long time. I think my first race was in March of 2013.
Okay.
And so that was roughly 3 to 4 years after I started really getting into running and enjoying running.
Okay. Yeah. So what
So
was your first race? Do you remember?
yeah, it was the Get Lucky.
Oh, cool.
So a St. Patty's Day race. And it was fun and enjoyable, and just that whole race experience, starting and finishing the race and accomplishing something with so many other people, was super fun, and it was addictive. And who doesn't like a bunch of swag?
Right, right. So it kind of hooked you right away.
Yeah. Yep.
When was your first marathon?
My first marathon was in October of 2015. So I swore I was never going to run a marathon. Like, I was like, that distance is crazy. Like, there is no way I will ever run that distance. Um, but what's funny is I didn't run my first 5K until after I ran my first marathon. So I kind of started with some longer distance races just for the same reason that I spent so long getting to a race. Was why would I want to get in my car and drive, you know, 40 minutes to go run a 3 mile race? Like, I can just do that in my backyard.
Right.
So um, I would say the transition for my running took place in October of 2014 when I ran my first half marathon.
Okay.
Um, and I ended up running like right around a 10-minute pace. And after completing that first half marathon, I was like, gosh, I can do so much better than this. Like, let's just compete against ourselves and see what we can do.
Mhm.
So, grandma's has a half marathon that goes along with that. So that following June of 2015, 9 months later, I ended up shaving 29 minutes off of my half time and um, just loved it.
Yeah.
Um, the whole race experience there up in Duluth, Minnesota is so cool. And it's such a pretty race alongside Lake Superior. So we ended up finishing that race. We went out to lunch and cleaned up afterwards, and we went back and saw the marathon runners. So, this is kind of like the back of the pack runners. And I was like,
Mhm.
why would you want to do that? Like, there is no way I'm ever going to run a marathon. Like, no way. So shortly after that race experience in Duluth, my sister-in-law had informed me that she had signed up for the Twin Cities Marathon.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, you're amazing. Like, there's still no way I'm going to run a marathon. Um, we had plans later that summer to travel to Florida together, her family and my family. And so I was like, you know, I'll support you in running your marathon and I'll do some of your training with you. Um, but in order for me to physically, I think, be able to help support her in doing her training in Florida, I was like, I need to know that I can run more than 13 miles, depending on whatever her training run is. So I went out one day and it was just an amazing day, um, where it was a day that you felt like you could run forever.
Mhm.
Like, the conditions were right, your body felt great. So I ended up just going out and I ran 16 and a half miles and I felt super good. And that was at the end of July. And the Twin Cities Marathon takes place at the beginning of October.
Mhm.
So again, I was like, there's no way, but I'll support her. But after that 16 and a half, I was like, well, gosh, a marathon's only 10 miles longer. And if I'm going to do the training with her, like, why not register? So about 10 weeks out is when I registered and made that commitment to run a marathon. So it's just kind of crazy how it all kind of came about.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
and
it.
I immediately said to myself, I was like, well, gosh, I wonder what a Boston qualifier is. Like, what do I need to qualify for Boston? So, let's not just shift from never running a marathon, but let's just go for it all.
Big goals.
Yep, exactly. So I sat down and I was like, okay, if I can do grandma's in X time and I double that, that's a 327. And I need a 345. So that's only like 18 minutes more. Like, why not? I can do this, right?
Right, right.
So during that first race experience, I mean, it was a beautiful morning. It was super exciting. I was running that day with my sister-in-law and my soul sister. And we were so excited because this race obviously is in our backyard. And, we have friends and family, and um, they were all there to cheer us on. And so
Right.
we're super, super excited. I mean, running 26.2 miles is daunting at first, and it was super thrilling to be able to know the course very intimately and to be able to run it and see friends and family along the way.
Mhm.
So we had a game plan that we're all going to stay in front of the 345 pacer, and we were going to do this, and we did well up until about mile 16 when the pacer just kind of sucked me in. And then by about mile 18, I'd hit that dreaded wall, and I was like, okay, this isn't what I had planned for. This isn't what I thought the first race experience was going to be.
Mhm.
Um, by the time I saw my dad and my friend and brother at mile 25, I was almost in tears because I was like, I've come all this way. I swore I was never going to do it. And, just seeing them in the emotion that it brought. And, my friend gave me a tap on the butt and said, get moving. And so, you know, you turn the corner to go into downtown St. Paul and you see the Capitol and you see that ginormous flag hanging there. And it's such a cool moment. And
Mhm.
I'll never forget it.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think Twin Cities Marathon is such a great first marathon too, just because of all the people that are there cheering, all the signs. There's just so much. There's music, there's so many things to distract you from the race itself. So it
Yeah.
helps, and just all the energy that's there that day. So, as your first marathon, not even thinking you'd ever run one, when you got to the finish line, because you finished, what were your initial thoughts? Do you remember kind of how you were feeling at the finish line?
I don't know that I recall anything other than crossing that finish line thinking, this is a really, really cool moment. And this is a really cool feeling that I'm going through right now. And, I finished right at 4 hours. So I was like, that's not bad. Like,
Great
we
first.
can do this again, so let's give it a shot.
So you did right away. You were thinking another one. Isn't that
Yep.
funny? You go from
Yeah.
never to the addiction
Yep.
right
Yeah.
away. So now I think, Boston came to mind in your first marathon. You just looked up the qualifications. When did it actually really come into play? When did it become that goal for you? And why was it a goal for you?
I think it became a goal for me in marathon number 2, um, because I had layered my half mile or half marathon experience on top of my marathon experience and thought, well, I went, in a course of 9 months, I cut out 30 minutes from my half time. Like, let's just compete against ourselves and see what we can do at grandma's full marathon in June. Like, it's the same amount of time between when I ran my first half and when I ran grandma's half that I was like, I can do this. Like, and to be able to run Boston, like, to me was again going from not ever wanting to run a marathon to, what, let's just go for all the guts and glory, and let's just do it.
Yeah.
So I trained super hard for grandmas, but the conditions that first grandmas wasn't really ideal. The temperature at the start of the race, it was 75 degrees, and the
Oh yeah. Was that
humidity was in the
2016?
70s. It was 2016.
I was
Yeah.
there. I saw you.
Nice. I saw you too.
I was cheering. Okay, but I wasn't running that day. Well, I ran the half. But yeah, I know what
Okay.
you're saying. So keep going. That was a crazy, crazy year.
Yeah, it was super, super hot, but it was a really cool experience to be up there along the lake again and to see the crowd support as you come into Duluth was really cool because it's kind of, you start out in Two Harbors and you're running the lake and you see pockets of crowd support and pockets of signs, and then as you come into Duluth on the northern side and you run through Duluth, like, that crowd support just gets more and more energizing. So from that perspective, it was really super cool. Um, and I ran really well at the first half of the race, but I'm one of those runners that gets up first thing in the morning and gets the run done. So with the
Mhm.
race starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then, you're trying to finish at 11:30, 12 o'clock, like, it was just getting brutally hot and you couldn't, you couldn't escape the sun. Um, and so I was able to make it to Lemon Drop Hill. And then after that, I fell apart and I mentally was drained, and um, I knew I was going to finish, but it just wasn't going to be the race that I thought it was going to be. I thought race number 2, I was going to be Q, and it just didn't happen. I ended up missing my Boston time by 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So it was,
That's impressive for it being so hot because it ended up being, I don't know when you finished, but I mean, it was 90s.
yeah, it was a brutally gross day, but um, it gave me hope though that, you know what, I'm not far off. Like I don't have to do a whole lot um to get there.
Right.
So I decided to rinse and repeat grandmas and did grandmas again in 2017. But again, the race conditions were kind of about the same. It wasn't quite so hot, but
Mm.
the same exact things happened in terms of it was a bright sunny day and you couldn't escape the sun and it was still that later start. And, I missed my time by about three minutes. And it's like, okay, we got to do something different. Like, if you don't shake things up, then you're going to keep getting the same outcome.
Right.
So I decided to try again. And in October of 2017, so 3 months later, I decided to run the Mankato Marathon and thought, okay, maybe it's not a spring marathon that's going to get me there. It's going to be a fall marathon when it's a little cooler. You can do your training in the summer heat and then reap the rewards on a nice cool day.
Right.
So I kind of shook up my training plan a little. I went from running 6 days a week for the other, let's call it two-ish marathons, since Twin Cities wasn't really a traditional training plan since I signed up so late. So I went from running 6 days a week, not doing any stretching or strength work, to doing 5 days a week. But then I implemented some yoga and a little bit of stretching and strength because I
Mhm.
was like, okay, we got to do something a little different, and we'll see what happens. So Mankato Marathon came, and it was the most beautiful fall morning. It was nice and cool and crisp. It was like 45 degrees that morning. So it was really super fun. I decided to start making a mantra sheet and bringing that with me so that I could just kind of, look at each mile and think of some type of positive saying to help me um, get through the 26 miles.
Mhm.
My husband was there along with my in-laws and my kids. Um, it was my sister-in-law and my soul sister running with me, and so we were having a great time. We were all hanging out together. There's a couple of big hills at the beginning of the Mankato marathon that, at one point I was like, oh my gosh, these hills are going to kill me already. And, you know, just that super awesome crowd, not crowd support, but like the fellow runners, helping to cheer you on and bring you along. And I remember just one guy saying, come on, let's get up this hill. And that was one moment that I remember very well during the race. But also mile 18 was super pivotal for me. I was ready to throw in the towel again, ready to just say, you know what, marathons maybe just aren't for me. Boston just may not be achievable. Um, but my husband and my in-laws and kids showed up unexpectedly around mile 18. And I will never forget the look on my husband's face. And he doesn't realize that his look um, made me change my mental state. It said a million different things in that one look, like, I'm proud of you, I love you, you have this, keep going. But most of all, it screamed at me like, don't you dare give up on your dream, don't you dare throw in the towel again, because you have done all of the work that it takes to get to where you want to go.
Mhm.
um, and I took off and started chasing people down and fishing people in. And I made it all the way to mile 25. And the back half of this particular marathon course, there is no crowd support because they're all at the finish line. So you get really close to the finish, and then they kind of have you do a loop off to the side. And nobody's on that loop because they all want to see their family and friends finish and cross the finish line. So you go from having this crowd support to not having any crowd support, and it just messed with my mental head. And so I started walking a little bit, and then the pacer passed me, and I was like, okay, like as I watch the pacer, his name is Pete, so as I watch Pacer Pete go further and further in front of me, I'm like, there goes Boston. Like I'm just watching Pete run in front of me, and I'm like, he's getting further and further away. But I looked at my watch and I was like, wait a second. He is far ahead of where I think he should be. Like, I can still do this. I got this. So I picked up the pace and I started running. I gave it my all, and I missed within 38 seconds. And, I just beat myself up at the finish line thinking, if I hadn't have walked, or if I hadn't have walked as long as I had, like it would have happened. But, you know, things are meant to be. I learned a lot. I learned that I could do it. I learned that the last half of the marathon is all mental,
Mhm.
and you have to stay mentally strong. Um, and it helped my mindset to go to a can do, like I can do this, rather than thinking, well, I might be able to do it, to just kind of make that shift, like, we got this.
Right, right.
We got this.
That's 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 a great mindset, and the fact that knowing 6.2 miles is not about the physical strength as much as it is about the mental strength and that fortitude to keep going and the resilience. And our body says stop, but our mind or heart can do it. Um,
Yeah.
our body can do more than what our mind tells it sometimes. So I think that's really really great that you had that. So I would love to hear from you just a little bit about how, because you learned it was mindset, you learned that that last 6.2 miles was all heart. So what did you do about that for marathon number 5, right? That would be the next.
Yep.
How did you break some of these mental barriers that you were having? What were they?
Yeah. So I listened to some podcasts and learned about Alex Hutchinson, who um, talks a lot about the mind being able to overcome many different things. So he calls it the governor theory. And, I started looking into that and really trying to understand how you can push yourself a lot further than you think you can physically. And the body is going to try and tell you that you're going into a place that you shouldn't, but it's not going to hurt you.
Mhm.
And I just kind of took that to heart, and thought, you can only get better if you get into that uncomfortable state, and to be okay with that comfortable state, as long as you're not like in physical pain, like you can overcome it. And um so I tried to stay super positive as I started to train for marathon number 5. Um, One of the things that occurred during marathon number 5 was Boston changed their standards, but I also aged, so
Oh
my
yeah.
standards still stayed at 3:45, which is great. Um, and so I ended up going to Fargo, North Dakota, and trying to run their pancake flat loop. And so I was super excited. I was like, I don't have to worry about hills. Like it's going to be this great race. And I changed my mindset through the training process to say we're doing this. Like it wasn't a matter of if, as it was with the first 4 marathons. It was this is going to happen. Um, and so I ended up making these note cards that had different slogans on them or different sayings on them. Again, rather than just having one mantra sheet, I had note cards that I actually carried with me. And
Cool.
so it was super fun. Like the first one was Toy Story, and Buzz Lightyear is telling Woody we're going to go out and run 26.2 miles for the fun of it, and just different positive up um, lifting sayings that I could read to my sister-in-law and soul sister as we're chasing this dream.
Mhm.
So the wins weren't necessarily super good to us that year. Um, it's a loop. So if the winds are out of one direction, like it's going to hit you at some point in time. And so the unfortunate thing is they were 20-mile-an-hour winds, and they were winds on the back half as you're trying to head back to the dome.
Right.
And I was like, we're I gave my family a pace card telling them exactly where I was going to be and when I was going to be there so that they could plan their travel around the course accordingly. And I remember seeing them at the first stop, and I said, throw out the plan. Like, we're going out super fast because we want to allow the wind to carry us a little bit further and take advantage of it and have us kind of push us.
Mhm.
Um, and that, obviously isn't what you want in a marathon. You should start out a little bit slower and finish faster. But I continued to just stay positive and made it to that back half. So mile 20, we started running north so that we could head back to the Fargo Dome. And the wind was just crazy. And I just kept saying to myself, it's like a warm butter knife, trying to slice butter. Like we're doing this, and the wind is not going to stop us. And um, I remember running through downtown Fargo, and we had to take one turn, and it was like you literally ran into a wind tunnel. And me and this girl next to me were like, what are we supposed to do? It's like you're putting all of this effort and you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Um, but I didn't let it discourage me. I continued to run. I knew that my family was going to be, roughly around mile 23, and I said, I'm doing this. Like we're not stopping. So I remember seeing my husband and kids towards mile 23, and I almost yelled to my husband, "Get out the checkbook! Like this is happening!" And I was like, "Okay, maybe I don't want to jinx it just yet." Um, so I kept fighting through those final miles, and I did it. I crossed that finish line. I had a 336 cushion. I didn't think it was going to be enough, but it still kind of got that monkey off my back. Like I can do it. And it was really cool. My sister-in-law and my soul sister, we all crossed the finish line at different times, but we all BQ'd. And so it's really super fun to look back at those pictures and think that we all accomplished a great race that day. Super fun.
That's so cool. Yeah, because what was your qualifying time? 3:45, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
really cool. And did you feel like you were mentally stronger in that race than you had been in the past ones?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, whether it was the mantra cards, whether it was, understanding the governor's theory a little bit more, or the governance theory, um, it's hard to say exactly what it was, but I went into that race with such a positive attitude, thinking that we can do this and accomplish what we want and accomplish our goals, that it just seemed so much easier than the other marathons. So that fall in September, when it came to registering for Boston, it was kind of fun. we just kind of all got on the phone together and registered together. And then, obviously later on in September, we had learned that none of us had been accepted just because the cutoff time was almost 5 minutes that year. So, even though we all BQ'd, we didn't hit that cutoff. So,
Right. Oh, and how did that, I mean, what did that do to you? How disappointing was that?
um, you know, I had these visions going into Fargo. I was like, okay, I'm turning 40 this year. It's going to be such a great birthday. Like, I'm going to find out on my 40th birthday I'm getting in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the opposite. I found out on my 40th birthday that I did not get into Boston. But, it's, you have to enjoy the journey,
Right.
and know that it's all part of your story, and it's how you get to run that iconic marathon that's so important. So
Right.
we gave it another shot.
Awesome. Yeah. And I want to, before we go on to your next, because you have two more races I want to talk about. One of the struggles you had said you had was belief in yourself doing it, belief in
Yep.
knowing you can. When was the point where you started believing it? Was it at the race number 5, or was it before or after?
I would say when somewhere between race number 4 and race number 5. Like, race number 4 being 38 seconds shy was like, okay, I can do it. So I went into the Fargo training cycle, and I was like, we're going to crush it. So I had a couple of races, like a 10-mile race and a half marathon that I did as part of my training cycle for Florida, or for Fargo. And I PR'd both of those races. And I was like, we're doing this. Like, we're not going to give up. We're not going to give in. Like, this is our year, and we're going to accomplish our Boston dream.
I love that.
So,
I love that. And because I think part of it is that belief. We have to have that belief in ourselves, because otherwise we can sometimes negate it, or we won't do the things that we need to do in order to get there.
yep.
Kind of self sabotage. So that belief
Yeah.
is huge. And I think it's cool that you had that belief coming into race 5, or even during race 5, because once you did it, you knew you could do it again.
Yep.
So, and even though you didn't hit the BQ that was going to get you to Boston, you knew you were going to get there, right?
Yep. Yep.
So tell me about your 6th marathon, because I believe this one would have gotten you into Boston, but you had 7, you had 2 that would get you into Boston. Right?
Yeah. Yep. So, spring of 2019, I decided that not only was I going to BQ and attempt to get into Boston, but I was also going to become a marathon maniac. I was like, if we're going to do this, let's just do it and be done. So I had registered for 3 races, one in the middle of May, one for the end of May, and then again, Grandma's Marathon. My thought process was, we're going to train super hard for the Wobegon Marathon that was in the middle of May. And then, we just need to accomplish or complete the other 2 in order to become that marathon maniac. Like, I don't need to run crazy marathons for the other 2 to be able to achieve that goal.
Mm-hmm.
So we did all of the training that we needed to for Wobegon. I had kind of tweaked things up a little bit. I went back to running, 5-6 days a week, but then I also had some more strength and yoga that I did on top of that to help just really build that strong foundation. One of the things that also happened just before Wobegon was the standards again changed. So now I need a 340 instead of a 345. But that particular day was super nice from a temperature standpoint, but the wind was once again not necessarily where we wanted it. So the last half of the marathon, we were running into the headwinds the entire time. So I just kind of had the mindset of, we're going to do this. We're just going to tuck behind people and conserve energy. And we're gonna figure out how we finish this marathon, and we still get a BQ. Um, so I ended up finishing Wobegon in a 107, and I was excited about that. Or I'm sorry, with a cushion of 107.
Yeah.
I was super excited about that, but I just, with them changing standards and not exactly knowing what that cutoff was going to be, I was super, super nervous, and I didn't feel confident that a cushion of 107 was going to be enough.
Right.
So, with it being the first of 3 marathons, um, I knew I had to do something different if I wanted that Boston goal, and I knew Marathon Maniacs could wait. So there was a coach that was on the sidelines at the Wobegon Marathon cheering on participants that he coached. And so I ended up reaching out to him just to get a different perspective. Like, how do I go from running Wobegon in the middle of May to running Grandma's 42 days later and shaving time off and not getting injured and achieving my ultimate goal?
Hmm.
Um, I think that was probably one of the smartest moves that I did, was hiring that coach, because I don't think I would have been able to um, successfully do what I did in Duluth without having somebody hold me accountable to slowing down my pace and not running as many miles. I probably would have tried to peak and have a 20-mile run in between
Right.
those 2 marathons. And so it was nice to have a coach to help me get there.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So
What did your coach
I
have you do?
we ended up taking 2 weeks of just kind of recovery, um, which I think I would have done, but then I don't think I ran more than 16 miles in between those 2 marathons. And we kept it super light and super easy. And he gave me the confidence that I needed to know that I wasn't going to lose it,
Hmm.
that everything that I had done to get me through Wobegon was still going to be there um, in June when I ran Grandma's.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's important because we do think like that. Like, well, what if I taper too long? Or what if I don't add speed? Or if I don't do this? Or if I don't do that? But it's really about training smart. And sometimes training smart means we need to rest and refuel so we can come out there and explode in that race. So, grandma's, your seventh marathon, how did you finish?
Nice. So I finished shaving off 5 minutes and 22 seconds from Wobegon. So over those 42 days, and simmering my training schedule helped me achieve that goal. And I mean, the weather was fantastic up there. It was just a picture perfect day. We had a slight tailwind.
Mm.
It was just super fantastic. And it was super fun to see friends and family and coworkers cheering me on through my phone or through my watch. And, I couldn't necessarily see what they were saying as it would pop up on my watch, but they were there. They were cheering me on. And my nephew at mile 23 and a half, and my nephew gave me a quick fist bump, and he said, "Everybody's rooting for you." And that just gave me so much gas. And, normally at that time in Grandma's, I would have been walking. That's just after Lemon Drop Hill, and it was so cool. I missed seeing my coach at mile 20, but when I made it there, he said, "When I see you at mile 20, we're gonna, just have a short conversation. We're gonna see, about a body check, and then you're gonna go on." And so I was like, "Okay, where's coach? Where's coach? I don't see him." So I said, "We're going to do this body check." we feel great. Like, okay, then we're going to pick up the pace and keep going. And so I ended up running a slower half, and my splits just kept getting faster and faster. And the really cool thing about that race experience was I learned what it felt like to run that 6.2 miles with my heart rather than with my body. And that is a moment and an experience that I'll never forget. And seeing my husband around mile 25 as I'm coming into that finishing corral area um, up in Duluth was super fun. I just kind of chucked my water bottle at him and was just in a place where I was like, this is the coolest experience ever.
Yeah.
And so when I crossed that finish line, I was like, okay, this is cool. I did it. Like, this is really cool. And my dad called me and he goes, you just ran like a 3:34. And I'm like, what? Like, how is that possible? That's so much more than I thought I would shave off.
That's awesome. And I think it's the power of the mind, the power of the rest, and actually the power of a coach, because the coach can tell you. I mean, we will work ourselves and forget how we're working ourselves. The coach will know how to train us. So I think those three things combined got you to that peak moment, and I think that's really, really special and definitely something to be proud of. Accomplishing a huge goal that was you had a goal, you never had a goal of running a marathon, having a goal of running Boston, to it taking a few tries to get there, and now this moment. And I know there were struggles in between that as well. One we already talked about was the belief in yourself that you now have. And I'm sure this is gonna, the thing I love about running is there's so many life lessons in there. And we push ourselves to be better, but it actually helps and kind of streams into all other parts of our lives, right? So our discipline and our routines and just our confidence, it can go into other areas. And I love that about running. I know that you had some struggles with injuries along the way, and just balancing, because you started running when you were a mom. So you didn't
Yep.
start running really until you had kids and you had a busy schedule. So tell me a little bit about those struggles and kind of how you worked with them, to be able to do your training and to get into all these marathons. And
Yeah. So I did, I was am still a morning runner. So I will get up, you know, before COVID at 4:30 in the morning to get my run in and still make it to work on time and make it home for dinner. So it very much a morning runner. And I knew if I didn't get my run done in the morning that it just wouldn't happen because the demands of getting dinner on the table or helping kids with homework or straightening up the house or whatever those demands were going to take hold, and then you find every excuse not to get those miles in and get your run done. um but then that also came with a lot of mom guilt because I'd be so tired at 9:15 at night that it was like, okay, I got to go to bed. And even though the kids are going to bed right now, I also need to climb into bed and go to bed with them so that I can recover and be able to do those miles that next day.
right, yeah. Ooh, excuse me. The mom guilt is huge, and I know I've experienced it. I'm sure most of the listeners have experienced it. So what were some of the things that you did to try and alleviate that guilt?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's just knowing that even though you're a mom and you love your children and you love your family so much, that you still need to do something for yourself so that you are holistically um, there for them, and you're teaching them that it's good to have goals, and sometimes you're going to have a hard time reaching those goals, but um, you still have to fight for them.
Mhm.
And if you can believe that you can do something, then you can achieve whatever you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge lesson to teach our kids. And I always say I want them looking at me, rather than looking elsewhere. I want to be an
Yeah.
example. And I think even though it was a victory for you to hit your Boston qualifying time, I bet you anything it was a victory for your kids and your husband too. Would you say so?
I would say so, mainly because I know when I went to my daughter's conferences a few weeks after I had registered and got accepted into Boston, that um, my daughter's teacher had made the comment. She goes, "Your daughter is so excited for you to go to Boston and run Boston that it just it's a moment that I'll never forget." And also for my husband to be able to you know come. We were going to go out as a family to Boston in this past April to have that whole experience. We were going to pull the kids from school, and it was going to be this great like celebration. Like mom got her dream, and she gets to run Boston, and we're going to do this as a family and celebrate.
Right. Yeah. So come spring 2020, we're
Yeah.
training, we're in the midst of training, almost done. And then we have a pandemic that shuts down everything. Boston gets postponed, not canceled. So there's a little hope. Probably not much hope. I'm sure most of us were kind of thinking it would happen. So once it officially they made the announcement that it was officially canceled for this year, what were your initial thoughts or emotions?
Yeah, like you said, it wasn't necessarily a big shock, but it was a huge letdown. Like, you know, even if we were going to be able to run it in September, like it wasn't going to be the same experience that we dream about running when we think about running on Patriots Day. But,
Right.
I kept telling myself that, we're the 25,000 people who will ever be able to say that they ran Boston in September. So like that's still really cool. But when they canceled it and not necessarily knowing right away like what that meant, like can we run, still are they going to defer us, or what does the fact that I worked so hard and ran 7 marathons to get there, what does that mean, or what does that look like? It was a world of emotion.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think, well, one, your sixth marathon where you only had the 107 and then you hit the other one, I think the time was like 139 to get in. So the fact that you were like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it again, and to make sure I'm there.
Yeah.
And then you have this huge cushion, and now there's still the unknown of what's going to happen because now my dream of Boston 2020 is no longer. Do I get a chance at 2021? And I think all of us have those feelings of where does this leave us, because we've worked so hard for these things, and especially as a first time Boston goer, your first
Yeah.
experience. um, I'm sure it's a little bit heartbreaking in that essence. I know that you most likely will be at 2021. You're going to reapply, right?
I will reapply. I'm not. I'm in this weird mindset where I'm not entirely confident that I will get in, just with the way that they're changing some of the window, especially. But I'm trying to remain positive that FAQs still need to come out so that we can understand what does it mean to have a 2-year um, window in terms of qualifying times. And it is what it is at the end of the day. And I will get to Boston. So if it's not in 2021, maybe it's 2022. And, I, for me, running Boston is running Boston with my sister in law and my soul sister. And if we can't all be there in 2021, then I'm okay with waiting until 2022. Like
Mm.
it that would be my ultimate victory run, is running with those two moms along my side.
Right. And I think it's so cool that you have that little posse, that you guys all have the same dream and you can train together essentially and run these races together. How encouraging that is. And just to have that accountability. It's really special.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. So maybe Boston 2021 will be your victory run. If not, I can definitely see Boston 2022 because you will get there. You have the drive, you have the resilience, you now have the mental training to get it done. And so I'm really proud of you and I'm excited for you. Now, when it comes to the virtual, are you going to run the virtual? Did you sign up today? I guess today,
Yep.
this is coming out after that. So today means like a long time ago, but
Yes, I registered for the virtual. I wasn't going to run it at first. And then my sister-in-law kind of just made a comment like, why? Why wouldn't you? And so I was like, yeah, why wouldn't I?
yeah.
So I am going to run the virtual with my soul sister, and we're going to meet my sister-in-law partway through the virtual, and she's going to run with us. And um, it it'll just be a fun run. It'll be a fun 26.2 miles.
That'll be fun. Well, and you can say you were a part of history because really it's kind of a stinky year and a stinky year for history. But as far as the Boston Marathon, it's never been canceled in 124 years. So it is an epic year to be a part of and to say, hey, I was a part of that. And I got to
Yeah.
Boston virtual, even though I hate virtual races, but that's okay. It's
Yep.
still going to be special and it's going to be epic. And it's really
Yeah.
what we make of it because we can pout or be disappointed and we can for a while because I was disappointed, but then we just kind of got to get up and go again and make the best of what we have because there's everyone else is in the same situation, right? Everyone else
Yep.
canceled on them and disappointments, and we just need to make the best of that.
Yeah.
So in closing, if you were to give any listeners who are working toward a goal but they don't quite believe in themselves to accomplish it, what would be the piece of advice that you would give to them?
I would tell them or encourage them to stay positive and to believe that you can achieve your goal. Um, Part of that is if you start the finish line unsure of how you are going to finish that race, then you've already lost that race. And so you need to start believing that you can achieve it and that your dream is just x number of miles away, and you have what it takes to get you there.
Cool. I love that. I do also believe if you have a dream, there's a reason you have it. And I think
Hmm.
if not you, why? I mean, if not, why not? Why not you? Really,
Yep.
have that dream. If there's a burning passion inside of you, there's a reason it's there. So we have to do something with it.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Just building that confidence and really believing at the start for the finish and
Yeah.
having that confidence right away. So, well, Jen, this has been so fun. I love getting to chat with a fellow Minnesotan. I guess I'm now a Coloradoan. I don't know how you say that, Coloradoan, but I'm
We'll
a
go with that.
at heart because that's where I was born and raised and forever. But this was really fun. Thank you for sharing your story and for being a part of this podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This conversation with Jen was so fun. It was exciting to hear all the different stories of her marathons and how she went from not a runner, not wanting to be a runner really, to becoming a runner, falling in love with it, never wanting to run a marathon, to running 7 marathons and qualifying for Boston or with qualifying times 3 times. And this year would have been her victory Boston run. I love the resilience that she has and that she exudes. I love that she was driven to work on that mental training to get her to the finish line well. And I also love that her 6th marathon, even though she qualified, she knew that she needed a bigger buffer. So instead of just sitting back and going, I hope this is enough, she decided to give it a go one more time and to crush her personal best. I hope you enjoyed this conversation today. I look forward to having more of these every month for you as we dive into mom victory stories and we get to share and celebrate with them. If you're interested in hearing a little bit more about my journey to Boston, Pick up a copy of Mind Over Marathon: Overcoming Mental Barriers in the Race of Life. It's my book that released last fall, and it's all about taking a dream from the beginning to the finish line. So it's not really about running, it's not just for runners, but I use the analogy of qualifying for the Boston Marathon and the success principles and the mental training that it took to hit that big dream that I had. I want to encourage you to go after a big dream that you have on your heart and to pursue it with all that you have, because it is totally worth it. You are worth it, and I believe in you. Dream huge, and remember, you are a winner. Just run your race.